I am really excited.
This week in game news, E3 Wait, never mind. E3 was last week. This week in game news, there's been a bit of controversy, or should I say a bat of controversy, regarding a new release. A lot of interesting games came out, and you can get a Cyberpunk game for cheap while helping charity. All this and more on the Blackman and Robin Game News Update. Super 3D Noah's Ark was released on Steam. The game is interesting because it started life on the SNES as an unlicensed title in 1994. Nintendo back then had a rather stringent process for letting games onto their platform, but Wisdom Tree Games bypassed Nintendo and used a little bit of hacker magic in order to get their game out. Super 3D Noah's Ark was later released on DOS, and in 2015, the game's 20th Anniversary Edition was re-released on itch.io for Mac, PC, and Linux. It's an intentionally non-violent FPS. You play as Noah, and you must use a slingshot to pacify animals with food. It's a very strange game, but it has its fans. Super 3D Noah's Ark is rather interesting because it stands at the crossroads of homebrew and commercial software. If you've been waiting 20 years for a non-violent version of Wolfenstein 3D, well, here's your chance. A game called Her Story was released on Steam for Mac and PC, as well as on iOS. It's set in 1994, and it's an FMV game about a British woman who is interviewed several times by the police regarding her missing husband. The game has gotten great critical reception and thus far has plenty of fans. Her Story is definitely on my playlist. I really like the concept of the game as you're watching a bunch of videos in order to determine what happened with the woman's husband. This is definitely a game that I'm going to have to visit at some point in time. I'll be sure to let you know once I try it out. Speaking of games released on iOS, games about the American Civil War were pulled from the Apple App Store. Earlier this week, Apple made the blanket decision to pull every application that contained the Confederate flag. They applied this decision to every game about the Civil War. The reason for it was that images of the Confederate flag used in offensive and mean-spirited ways, whatever that means, is apparently grounds for having your app removed from the store. This bizarre ban hit the critically acclaimed Ultimate General, Gettysburg, which, according to its developers, has been employed by teachers when teaching their students about the Civil War. After some very late-night phone calls, the developers managed to get their game back up on the iOS store. Before that happened, however, one of the developers had made a blog post saying that they are not going to amend the game's content, and Ultimate General Gettysburg will no longer be available on AppStore. In short, they wouldn't change their game, refusing to compromise on their artistic integrity in order to make Apple's PR department feel useful. As we suspected they would, Apple is slowly putting games back up on their store. Interestingly enough, however, it was only games and apps that were affected. Movies about the American Civil War that contained the Confederate flag, they weren't pulled from iTunes. Throughout the whole fiasco, it was possible to purchase books that had the Confederate flag on their cover. In the past, Apple has made it clear that they don't view games and applications as being on the same level as books, movies, and music. In fact, their official App Store guidelines say, "We view apps different than books or songs, which we do not curate. If you want to criticize a religion, write a book." Essentially, this conveys a few different messages from Apple. First, their PR is more important than your business. If Apple decides that what you're doing on their platform isn't good for PR, they'll wind up removing your content. Legally speaking, they have every right to do so. That said, their moves over the last few days do not set a good precedent for business. Additionally, they also send the message that video games are not important as a storytelling medium or for the sake of getting across a message. At best, according to Apple, games are essentially glorified toys that are good for making a quick buck. At worst, they're a menace to their image. There was an outpouring of support for Ultimate General Gettysburg. The PC version of the game got featured on the front page of Steam, and tons of tweets and supportive Facebook messages were sent to the developers. Hopefully this whole fiasco encourages people to move to platforms that are more open, more transparent, and more honest about their guidelines. Batman Arkham Knight launched on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One this week. It was met with generally good reviews, and essentially it's your quintessential Arkham game. You run around, you fight bad guys, and you do things that should kill people but don't, because you're Batman. Also, for the first time in the series, you can ride around the Batmobile, which some folks complained about since there's an awful lot of Batmobile segments in the game. Anyway, that's all good and dandy, but the game also launched on PC this week with a plethora of problems. In spite of the game's delays, many of the glitches on the PC version hadn't been accounted for. To start with, the game suffers massive frame rate drops at times. Your frames per second may dip into the single digits, and on beefy hardware the game averages about 30 frames per second. That's a problem. There are so many problems with the PC version of the game that it's no longer available to purchase. In a letter to players, the developers said that they want to apologize, and that they've decided to suspend future game sales of the PC version while we work to address these issues to satisfy our quality standards. If you either purchased or pre-ordered the game, you're eligible to have it refunded if you want your money back now on Steam. Or you can wait and see if Warner Bros. Fixes the game as it ought be. Moral of this story? Don't pre-order. Warner Bros. Is handling this quite well, but if it were another company, perhaps one that cares a little bit less about its reputation, who knows how this would have worked out. Still, this whole fiasco just goes to show how important Steam's refund system is. Now that it's no longer necessary to jump through the hoop to get a refund of a game, when a developer messes up this badly on a hotly anticipated title, there's now some recourse. Be sure to stick with us as we'll be reporting on Batman. Same Blackman time, same Robin channel. A rather interesting game released this week is MacGuffin, the Atomic Robbery for Mac and PC. It's a first-person comedy-adventure game in which you solve puzzles and seek out the titular MacGuffin. In case you're not familiar with the term, a MacGuffin is an item that's important to a story that's usually being sought out, like the Maltese Falcon, for instance. The game itself looks very interesting, blending different visual styles, and apparently it's quite funny. It's available at concretegames.itch.io for the low price of $2.39. Also, the developers promise music from another space and time. You can't beat music from another space and time. Lefis Path of Progress was released on Steam for PC this week. Set in the Lefis steampunk universe, your goal is to colonize and develop distant lands. As you build up your great cities, you need to honor the requests of an emperor and keep your citizens happy. At the same time, it's important to keep your production going and to establish and continue trade. There's something very pretty about the aesthetic. It reminds me a lot of the pixel art in older DOS games, albeit evolved for modern systems. The game thus far has gotten pretty good reviews, and I definitely intend on getting my hands on it. While it's only on PC right now, Triskel Interactive does have plans to bring it to Mac and Linux. Fresh details regarding the upcoming Super Mario Maker have just surfaced. The game, which is coming to the Wii U, will be shipping with over 100 pre-made levels on the disc. In case you haven't heard of Super Mario Maker, it's a video game that allows you to build Super Mario levels. The game will be released on September 11th, 2015. The Flitch.io Kickstarter has kicked off. Flitch.io is a smartphone controller case that uses NFC both as a highly efficient power source and in order to connect to the phone. It has a couple of analog sticks and shoulder buttons. If you have a Samsung Galaxy S6, you'll definitely want to look into this. The advantage that Flitch.io promises is to have the controls on the back of your phone, away from the screen, where your fingers are. Unlike other controller cases, it doesn't add an awful lot of bulk to your device. The developers say that there's support for a variety of games, emulators, and even remote-controlled quadcopters. You can find out more about it at flitch.io.
In your hand, it feels really solid. It's high quality, it's got a good grip, and you get it and you just want to start playing.
We have built, tweaked and tested 6 iterations of prototype over the last 1.5 years.
All of the research and development to create this fully functioning prototype has been funded by us, friends, family and grants from Innovate UK. Now we need your help to start manufacturing Fricio.
We are really excited about making mobile gaming better.
Please back us and spread the word.
Thank you.
Today marked the start of BIG, Brazil's Independent Games Festival, which goes on this year from June 27th to July 7th in Sao Paulo and Rio. Exhibitors are showing off 50 games from around the world for folks to play. It's also meant to be a business and networking event for developers and other folks in the industry. You can find out more about the festival at bigfestival.com.br. Last week, we learned that a very dedicated Fallout fan sent tons and tons of bottle caps, 2,000 to be specific, and mailed them to Bethesda. This week, Matt Grandstaff, one of the staffers over at Bethesda, announced that they will be honoring this fan's order, albeit he's the only guy who's allowed to order with bottle caps. If you are planning on trying this, well, you're gonna have to wait for Fallout 5. Now, in case you somehow missed the joke, you should know that in the Fallout series, it's possible to pay for things using bottle caps. In fact, they're currency. Hence, what this fan did was pretty special. The Terraria 1.3 update is coming to PC on June 30th, 2015. It comes with over 800 new items, an expert mode, Steam Cloud saving, and better integration with Steam in order to invite friends into games. Terraria is a game that's been out for a few years now. Even though it could be seen as complete, the developers have been constantly pushing new, free updates to the game. Even though it has a significantly smaller player base than Minecraft, Terraria is possibly the only competition, at least in a 2D Metroidvania sense, in that the developers have done a fantastic job at continuing to support the game post-launch. Relogic, the developers of Terraria, have really gone above and beyond with supporting the game. The game Polybridge is coming to Steam's Early Access on June 30th, 2015. There's something incredibly endearing about the game's style. It's a bridge-building puzzle game in which you must build bridges that hold themselves up, that support the weight of cars and other objects, and perhaps build a few stunt bridges. The game will be available on Mac, PC, and Linux, and I have to say that the style of it is really very cute. If you like the high-res, low-poly aesthetic that we've been seeing a fair amount of lately, you'll definitely want to check out Polybridge. Geometry Wars 3 Dimensions has just been released on Android devices and Amazon Fire tablets. The game was among my top 10 picks for games worth grabbing in the 2015 Steam Summer Sale, and for good reason. It's a beautiful shmup in a world of geometric shapes. Armed with your trusty laser, it's you against the shapes. I admit that I'm not really much of a twin-stick shooter guy. I was kind of the mind that once I've seen one of those games, I've seen them all. But Geometry Wars 3 really changed my mind on that. There's really great variety in the level design, and ultimately, it's worth your time. If you like neon colors and fast-paced gameplay, check out Geometry Wars 3. Released this week on the Wii U was the game Yoshi's Woolly World. Much like the beloved Kirby's Epic Yarn, which was released some years ago and put Kirby in a world made of yarn, Yoshi's Woolly World puts Yoshi in a world full of wool. It's possibly the cutest Yoshi game released yet, and if an adorable wool Yoshi isn't cute enough for you in a game, how about in real life? Special amiibo were released just for Yoshi's Woolly World, and they're made of actual wool. Now keep in mind that while the game was released, it was only released in Europe. If you're living in the United States, you're gonna have to wait for it until October. That said, it's definitely gonna be worth picking up. The game has, thus far, gotten really great critical reception. Finally, a game called Spybugs has been released on Steam. It looks pretty cool, and I have not seen anything like it since Mr. Mosquito, but the trailer is funny for all the wrong reasons. You can check this game out on Early Access for Mac, PC, and Linux, but take a look at the trailer and try not to laugh.
Our operators are in place.
And our cyber drones are ready for the job.
Of course. They have been tested many times.
And our mission in Europe?
In a few days, our private information market will be ready.
That's impressive. But your incident with the insurgents is problematic.
Relax. That band of hackers are going nowhere.
They call themselves the Hexotech.
Let them come. We will be ready.
Well, that's it for this week's game news. Be sure to enjoy the following trailers. We don't have any commentary for them, they're just here for your viewing pleasure. Meanwhile, be sure to follow at Blackman and Robin on Twitter and Instagram for all the latest game news, reviews, previews, and interviews. Follow me at Jordan_Cameron for my other views.
In a faraway cosmos known as Tasty Space, the great Bacon Spirit, creator of worlds, gave birth to an unimaginable horror. From the burning grease of boundless space came a hero known as Bacon Man.
over here!
Alright, time to start hacking into these systems. Whoa, don't do that.